KFM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America, this is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman.
Fires a pass, and it's intercepted by the Huskers at the 25, Jay Foreman. And Foreman takes it down to the 19-yard line of Oklahoma. Another big play by the Blackshirts.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
Good morning to a rainy Sunday morning. This is Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Day like today, Harrison, is when all my aches and pains are inflamed. You know that? Did you know that about me? So if you ever want to know my kryptonite, the music needs to go down, I think. If you ever want to know Jay Foreman's kryptonite, it's humidity, dampness in the air, and of course cold.
Is this still raining when you were coming in? Because it was just kind of sprinkling when I was going in.
It's pouring right now.
Is it really?
Yeah. And I'd like to say I'm sweet, so then I would melt, but yeah, it's pouring. But yeah, I want to thank Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard, for the support for Inside the Huddle. By myself, Jay Foreman. Harrison is my co-partner on the ones and twos, making me good. You probably sound good. I don't look good this early in the morning, but it's all good. We're another week into officially the second week is through the Matt Rule era of the I guess they call it fall camp, but it's actually summer camp, leading you into the fall football season. And, I said it earlier in the week, Harrison, on Old School with DP, that I felt like this weekend really is how you separate yourself. And everybody just, the text line blew up. Oh, like, does somebody have to have big plays or, an interception if you're a DB or a whole bunch of tackles in a, I'm assuming some sort of controlled scrimmage or, they scrimmage in some, some form or fashion. And I said no, and the reason why I said the second week is when I always say this, when you separate the champions from the chumps. It is, and it's not necessarily meaning that if you are in the quote unquote Jay Foreman chump category that you can't, eventually become somewhat of a champion, and it's a mindset, right? So the first week of fall camp or football season, everybody's excited, the energy levels there, because you've been waiting all summer since spring. You kind of been training and for it and wanted to show off your improvements that you did physically and hopefully mentally, and you get to get out there and hit somebody, and it is working towards the the goal of the season, so you're actually practicing for real. But that wears off very quickly, Harrison, because nobody looks at how far the season is away when you first start, because you're so excited. You're not as sore yet. It's not as monotonous. It's not raining every day like it is today. But when you're getting there at the stadium, it's a little bit darker. And I'm sure when you're leaving, you're probably, ideally too tired, or it might be getting towards the, evening time. And now, granted, it's light until 8:30 or something, usually 9 o'clock. So it's not as dark, but it's some long days, right? So that's where, you start to see the separation in that second week. One, it's the mental power, the mental prowess, the mental strength, and the ability not to get broken. And more is put on your plate. The first week is a lot of going over what you finished in spring. You're really installing again your basics. These are like your basic plays, your basic defensive coverages, your basic formations on special teams, and going through situations and going through very basic situational football. The second week is more offensively and defensively. Then you have to retain what you did in the first week, and then you have to do more on special teams. And on top of, you start to get a little bit of overuse, and so it's not only physically you're more wear and tear. Mentally, it's probably more taxing than it was obviously at any other time in the first week. Well, there's an old saying that everybody has a breaking point. Every team has a breaking point, and it's not that you're broken and you can't recover, but that's how the guys that can stay focused, have a routine, continue to find ways to challenge themselves, individually for the betterment of the team, which would be collectively, is how you're able to push yourself through this second week, because the coaches are watching. Do the mental errors go up? Do you have a easy mental error, meaning like did Harrison or Jay Foreman bust a coverage that is like one of our staples that we put in last week, probably pounded into repetition wise, and then now we only did it one or two times and we forgot a check, we forgot a formation, we forgot an alignment, and let alone did we get beat deep? Or same thing on offense, did we one of our staple plays did somehow everybody went right and you're the only person that kind of went left or real hesitant? I mean, it does happen, and this is how you separate yourself. And you get that in a week. It was a little bit hotter and humid this week, depending on when they practice, and the intensity should be ramped up. And if me and as much as I like you, Harrison, if we're in there and I start to hate seeing you. There's just things about you I just don't like. That I don't like your hair color. Just you start to get tired of seeing each other in close proximity, right? And that's where you see maybe some scuffles at practice, so forth and so on. But then also the mental errors could be, if you're not used to it and you're not used to a competitive environment, let alone the culture that Matt Rule is demanding and setting in place right now. A high accountability is a must. Intensity is a must. Continue to do the things that you should be doing, maybe that you hadn't been held accountable to do in the past, let alone a very physical camp and demanding camp, right? You see some guys that, kind of just stay in their lane and stay pat, and then you see some guys that start to move forward on the field. And, they had a scrimmage yesterday. I don't know, we didn't, really see, hear much how it went, but, obviously there's some big news that we'll cover here in a couple minutes with, the departure of Xavier Bets, and he won't be the last. I mean, you think the first week, right? You start to see guys trickle off, man. I mean, this is just the way it is.
Saw it with Farmer. That was unexpected.
Before the season starts. Some guys go through, the spring, summer, and show up to fall camp, and maybe they haven't had their I's dotted and the T's crossed. And you might not be invited to camp, or you might not be in the position that you need to. Maybe that's a one-on-one trying to feel you out, because a lot of times a coach will call you in and they want to read your body language. They want to really see if you're all in, because all these kids are going to tell them, right? They're not going to. These kids aren't so oblivious to where they're going to like say something that's going to get them nudged into the transfer portal. They want to look at how many workouts were you late to. How many, let's just say linebacker meetings, that weren't mandatory that I missed, right? What's my attitude like? Have I worked on some of the things that maybe were explained to me that could be holding me back or would help me become a better player, let alone a better teammate? And if those things don't add up, and then also where you have other guys that take a big step forward physically, right? So when you had, and I was talking to DP in Austin, and I was like, look, a lot of times a coach will tell you everything that you want to know. You just have to listen, especially with Matt Rule, because he's going to be very positive. He's going to be very frank and to the point. Yes, he can win a press conference, but he's a football coach. So if you know the language and you know what he's saying, or know what to listen for, and the big word there is listen, he'll tell you everything. It's really simple. Is I don't know if you call it voice octave. When his voice goes up and you can tell like the excitement or what he's saying when it comes to somebody, say like Gifford, right? When he talks about he's going to nullify any of the typical lazy thinking because he's a kid from Lincoln. Let's just say like obviously a white kid playing safety in the Big Ten. What is he going to tell you? 36-inch vertical, 10-foot broad jump, so forth and so on. He is really taking hold of the leadership role. He's the alpha back there. Boom. He didn't have to go into detail about that, right? Because generally coaches would be like, "Oh yeah, Harrison's having a great camp. He's working hard. He's a great addition to the team." No, that's a check in the good part. But when you go into details, he's letting you know that he is combating any type of your assumptions because he's starting to gain confidence in him as a player, right? And so those things adding up for the Giffords, the Singletons. He had mentioned Omar Brown. Those are three guys, along with some younger guys, you know what I mean, that it can kind of, play different, levels. Let's just say you're a post safety or you're kind of like that rover. Well, that gives you flexibility. And so then if you have a player over here, regardless if you had 70-some tackles last year and play some, good football towards the end, Matt Rule is like, I'm evaluating you on what you did now or you're doing now. And that's where you have the, on the surface what the Miles Farmer situation looks like. And then obviously coming, just that Saturday, and Matt Rule doesn't talk every day. So he said, Xavier Bets is, not on the program anymore, which is, when he says that, there is no return from that. And this is the second time. So when you have the same situation early in camp, it's a little bit of disappointing. I'm more disappointed for Xavier in the sense of it's not a talent thing. I mean, you got 6'3", 210, 4'4", 40, 4'3", 4'5", 40, NFL size, hands, and all that other stuff. And just not able to kind of push yourself through it. It's just look at just this level of football might not be for you right now if you want to play football. But I think the talks and stuff have to be with him. Does he actually want to play football? That's probably been the biggest question coming out of high school. And that doesn't mean he's a great kid.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a bad kid. Sometimes football is not for everybody at this level. It just isn't.
Well, it takes a lot on your body too. That's a big part of it. And if you got to be really committed to be into that. It's a long road if you get everything out of it you want.
Right. I mean, look, sometimes, and it's and this is one of the hardest things that none of these recruiting gurus or people that, kind of can, put assumptions on what you never know how somebody's going to react to consistent competition. You just don't. You don't know if they have the love for the game, right? You just don't. For every Randy Moss, there might be a Betts. For every Jay Foreman, there might be, somebody else, in the environment that they're in initially generally could dictate that, right? So if you, and here's a perfect example, right? Chris Carter, who's a Hall of Famer. His son went to Ohio State. I think he had some issues. He goes down to Nick Saban to Alabama, right? Lineage, bloodline, end up being a great player. Did not work out for him. He ended up going to Indianapolis, kind of did really good in the preseason. That didn't work out for him. Then he went to the CFL and had a pretty good career. Sometimes when you're at this level, it just doesn't work out. It's just not for everybody. You know what I mean? And that and it has nothing to do with talent. Football is a totally different sport out there. It's the hardest one to be successful in, and it's the hardest one to, I guess, let go of, because football lets go of you before you letting go of football. You get retired from football, like the NFL retired me. I didn't retire. You know what I mean? It was not a mutual, you know how they say mutual decision? It was not a mutual decision. Peyton Manning, Barry Sanders, who I'm thinking, Jim Brown, and I wouldn't even say Peyton Manning, football retired Peyton Manning. So Barry Sanders, Jim Brown, Tom Brady, I think, because Tom Brady still was, I think, a top 5-6 quarterback when he retired. Those guys retired because they chose to stop playing, right? You generally, the NFL, or in this case, college chooses when,
throw Antonio Brown in there. A little different.
Yeah, a little different situation. Yeah. Antonio Brown retired himself. The one thing with Antonio Brown is he might be the luckiest brother out there. He, like Jay Foreman, what he pulled in Pittsburgh with that type of organization, I would have never got a chance to get a $30 million contract. He was 48 hours away from getting guaranteed $30 million.
Yeah.
And he tricked that up. Then for some reason, he goes to New England, and all for everything coming on New England, it was just, and he ended up not being like the one time it wasn't his fault with the story that came out. He got released. Well, Tom Brady says, you know what, this dude can play.
Yeah, he threw him a lifeline.
Not a lower lifeline. He said, I'm going to overfeed you so you can get $1 million bonus. He wins the Super Bowl, comes back the next year, and he blows it up again. There's not anybody that had that many chances and that ability to make that type of money ever. But again, then NFL retired him because you're no longer wanted, because guess what? The juice isn't worth the squeeze. With Xavier Bets, it's just, you have a tremendous local talent. It was a great story. I mean, it's very commendable to come in and knock out 21 hours. I mean, that's a hard caseload,
Yeah, and hopefully, wrap up school. Like, he got that knocked out, and that's still an accomplishment in itself.
Right, but you still got a lot more. I mean, just as mentally taxing as school is, as well, as you get, longer in the college environment. So you want the best for him as a person.
I wonder if that was part of the burnout too.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is a lot
to get in, and then you're, like you said, fall camp's no joke either.
Yeah, it's a lot. But I think it would have, you can work around that. I just think sometimes you get into the camp and things don't necessarily go the way you had hoped they go, right? And you have to fight through camp, man. You got to fight. I mean, because the staying power is something that isn't evaluated enough. The hardest thing about recruiting is knowing what makes a player, Harrison or Jay Foreman, tick. How will you react to adversity? How will you react to, hard work? How will you react to hard coaching? Or not even hard coaching, just being coached. How will you react to failure? How will you react to looking across the line of scrimmage and seeing somebody just as athletically gifted, and a lot of times maybe more athletically gifted than you? Will you just cower and quit, or will you find a way to, like I always say, figure it out? Will you find a way to get open? Will you find a way to improve? Will you find a way to gain an edge? That's what it comes down to. That's the difference between, being 4-8 and 8-4. That's the difference. Finding a way to constantly compete, finding a way to have some long-term goals, and understanding it might not just happen right away for you. It might take a year. You might go from 4th on the depth chart to 1 in a year and a half. It might take a little while for it to click for you.
Well, Juergens is a prime example of that.
Right.
He wasn't even playing that position. And now he's set up to play that position. Well, Kelsey came back, but
at the highest level.
Still set up to play, under one of the best centers. And everything coming out of the Eagles camp, he's got a high ceiling.
Well, yeah, and then they think so highly of him that they have him. They're gonna make him ideally a better center by having him play right guard. I know I watched it last night to see how he's doing, and so that lets you know, look, you have to be willing to go through the challenge. You got to think Cam Juergens was like Paul Bunyan coming out of Beatrice, right? From a very young age. You heard about him, a big kid, 6, they were saying he was 6'5", he was 6'3", 6'4". He's legit 6'3" and a half. That he was dunking at age 12. You never seen anything like this before. Man amongst boys in 7th, 8th grade playing football, probably destroying people. And then he went to one of those Nike Spark camps. And you just meet people and you say, man, they keep saying, you heard about Cam Juergens? No. And then the more you hear his name, okay, this dude's for real. He goes to one of those, and it was Nike Spark. Next thing you know, he's a 4-star recruit because he was a tight end. Right. And tight end kind of running back and, one-man gang down there. So, years go by, he comes to Nebraska, and, next thing you know, and you got to give Scott Frost and Greg Austin at the time all the kudos to having the wherewithal and the thought process of moving into center, and then Cam, more importantly, being open to it, knowing that his athletic ability and explosiveness is good in Nebraska as a tight end. Not the next level, but it can be next level at center. Then he's open to it. So you got to think that
willing to work at it too. You remember all the fumbles?
Well, I was just about to say that the adversity that he had to fight through and deal with, being a local kid, not only, they don't read the paper anymore, but look, I mean, he had some trouble snapping the ball. I mean, let's just be honest. It was almost like everybody, and it wasn't just the ones that were really, really bad. It was the ones that were really, really high that was messing up the flow of the offense and the mesh of the offense. And then he, missed some blocks. To work through that for a year and a half, or first of all, like the whole football season, that means it was the preseason, then the football season, and then really bear down and find a way to get going in the off season. You can't measure that, man. That's 5-star type of internal fortitude to be better, to fight through it. He very easily could have quit and said, you know what, I'm going to go somewhere where I can be tight end. I guarantee you he could have probably transferred to North Dakota State and been a tight end and did very well. Probably would
still have a shot in the NFL.
Right. Somehow, some way. Right. But what did he do? He stuck to it. Stuck to his guns, believed in himself. Now he had 2 coaches that believed in him and took some heat for it. But that's why you got to give them props for it. And that's an example. But I'll be willing to bet you that in natural talent, Xavier Bets has more natural talent. And that's as hard to say than Cam Jurgens.
Yeah, that's surprising because Cam Jurgens' athleticism is always surprising, which is why I think he works so well at center.
Right.
Yeah, that footwork is next level.
Well, he got bigger. He probably went from let's say 245, right? 250 at the most when he came in to he's probably about 290, 285, 290. So as he got bigger, he never lost any of his quickness, explosiveness. And Cam has the right mindset for it.
Yeah.
He's an aggressive, finish through the whistle type of guy and plays it the right way. So it's a natural fit. And the Xavier Bets, it's just one of those things that you're always going to be shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? And the difference between, I think, this year and last year, I felt like the support is 100% there from top to bottom. That means, administration with the football program, head coach, position coach is there, but they also are holding you accountable that you got to be a part of the team and you're going to have to fight through some tough times. And it just wasn't there. I think probably last year, the turning the page so quickly probably wasn't there. I think that was probably accumulation of things, but I think it's just part of the camp. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not the last one. And it's not that Matt Rule's making it so hard that people quit or he's not being unfair to like anybody that's kind of like a holdover. He didn't have to open the door back up for Xavier Bets, right? But he felt like the kid wanted to play. He said he wanted another chance. He's new. Matt Rule said, look, everybody that wants to be here, you're welcome here, but you have to work and you have to want it and you have to be part of the team, and I'll give you a chance. But I'm not going to give it to you for free. And you got to earn it. You got to respect that. But then if you don't earn it, I got to hold you accountable. So that's where, I don't know what the conversation, I don't know how it started, but obviously we know how it ended. It's unfortunate, not only for, Xavier, because I feel like, look, man, you're missing out on a great education and to do something, regardless of where you ended up in 3 or 4 years at the University of Nebraska. But also I know it's disappointing for the football team because I felt like he could have made a big impact. It could have been huge in the, let's say, selling point of somebody that started out rough, found a way, dove into a different type of environment and excelled, and it was right there for him. Probably easily the most talented guy in the room. But talent only takes you so far. Potential only takes you so far. The one thing I'll say before we go to break, I remember having this conversation with my dad, and he was talking about potential, right? He was like, what the potential guys are? Because I think we played against a guy in basketball that had a lot of potential, but he's right. He's like, all potential means you ain't done crap yet. He said that's all that means, and he's like, everybody's hoping you start to do something.
That's fair.
And that's honest to God true. When you hear the P, he's like, everybody falls in love with potential.
Yeah. No one's watching LeBron James saying he has potential at this point.
Yeah.
He's just LeBron James.
Right. And so everybody falls in love with the potential guys and all that because they're thinking, what if? But that's where draft busts come into, play. And that's where recruiting busts come into play. And that's where a lot of things generally don't work out. Because guys that generally are successful already have the potential, but the work ethic and the things that need to be done are already there. You think Randy Moss didn't have all the? You think when Randy Moss was in like 8th grade, they was like, man, he got a lot of potential. Yeah, but he works his tail off and he's dominant.
Mm-hmm.
And then when times get tough, that's when he really starts to turn it up. And so that's the difference. You wish him all the best. We're gonna go to break and then we're gonna come back and look, man.
It's Farley. You see Farley in there?
Yes, Farley. Yeah, some of us get up early and work. You on the Call of Duty, but we come back. We're gonna comment on Farley. He's on the YouTube comment section via Facebook. We're gonna talk more about what to look for going into week 3 and what I've heard coming out of Minnesota camp, which I think is interesting. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, Advanced Medical Imaging. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
Summer is near. Now's the time to clean or replace your furnace filter to get the most out of your AC. Find energy-saving tips at les.com/save-energy.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
There were a lot of situations where all you needed was that kind of 2-minute drill. That was it. Nebraska never was able, under Scott Frost, to really get one of those things going. The 2-minute drill and the ability to move productively, move the ball, has been a complete failure for Nebraska over the last few years. I think a big part of being successful in that is having a quarterback that can move. And we know Jeff Sims can move, probably bail you out of a lot of situations.
Summer is over. It's time to settle into your back-to-school routine. I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. As teachers, we're excited to see our students again. Parents, help your child. Set a time and a quiet place for homework and establish bedtime routines so your child will be rested and ready to learn. Help us make a bright new beginning for our students this year.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association in this station.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes. Don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
When you're high, you feel different. Think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
This is where it happens. Long hikes with friends, kayaking adventures with family, more horseback riding, zipline gliding, rock-based climbing, hammock camping fun than you could ever imagine. And it's all outdoors, amongst the trees and across the prairie, here beneath Nebraska skies. Plan an outing today at yournebraskaadventure.com. Sponsored by Nebraska Game and Parks. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
The captain, Vershawn Jackson.
Gilbert could be at every down tight end. He looks the part. I mean, I had a chance to talk to him. He has, to me, transformed himself again in the offseason. I want to see him blocking and play action stuff.
Well, maybe if you do put him in the slot, you throw a quick hitch to him and, let the big guy rumble.
But I think Fedoni is just as dangerous. I think you put those two guys together, that's a dangerous tight end room. I like them together more than I like them apart.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
Back, Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, Advanced Medical Imaging 7601, Pioneers Boulevard. Touched a little bit on the Xavier Bets thing, dive into more to the Matt Rule and what he was saying yesterday. He just said, good thing is Xavier said he intends on staying in school. Which, obviously is important, and just said his heart wasn't in it. So sometimes that's just the difference. You gotta look, man, you just can't, man. I mean, it's just football is not a sport that you can participate in. You have to play football, and you got to play it hard, and it's hard. And Matt Rule is making it hard. Mm-hmm. It is not that it's making it so hard that you can't do it. It's making it hard that you have to really – he's trying to see who's really in it.
Yeah.
Because he knows that he's not going to be able to build a program with a high percentage of guys. And I mean a high percentage. If you have 15, 20% of your roster that's faking it, you ain't going to win no games around here. He knows that. I mean, if you think that Matt Rule didn't get a lay of the land before he landed and asked the right questions and asked some people what they thought about the program, you're silly. If you think he just showed up cold turkey and just say, yeah, it's great to get paid or whatever, and I'm here. He didn't have, he didn't, and this isn't saying anything odd or new. He didn't have to come here because he was going to be getting paid from Carolina. He could have just sat at home and been on the beach and just collecting a big fat check. And yeah, it's probably a little bit more here, but he didn't have to come here. So in order for him to come here and knows from the outside looking in, number one, he knows a lot of people in college football, so he's getting their opinions. Number two, he's probably going to ask people closer to the program. Number three, I'm sure when Trev was interviewing him, I don't know how many times, he asked Trev what he thought the problems were, or, with the football program. And I'm sure he asked some people that were either played here or had been here recently, or somebody that has coached against Nebraska and in what they've either heard or saw. And so one of the things is that you have to see who's really committed to the to the cause of getting this thing turned around, because he's done it before. And Temple and Baylor were extremely different, right? Temple, you're playing, I think, with house money. You do have to just change the whole structure of it, and they never wanted anything. Baylor, it was after Art Briles, and you had to clean up a lot of the act inside the athletic department football program.
He talked about that first year. He said he had about 28 scholarships. He needed 50.
Right.
Just a complete turnover. He had
right. So you have to wait your time until you can kind of go out and add, and then you've seen it slowly but surely get better. But, the talent in Texas is there. You just are you just held accountable for prior stuff. So it's a lot different. Now here we have a blue blood program that's been on some downtimes, whether it's through, coaching hires, athletic director hires, or whatever you want to call it, just hasn't added up. So for him coming in, I can't speak for Matt, but just for somebody that, outside looking in, you would probably think of like, how is Nebraska should never be on a run of being this bad.
Mm-hmm. The last Power 5 school to not make a bowl game. Should never happen for a blue blood, quote unquote blue blood.
Because there's no reason, because fan support's there, financial support's there, tradition's there, everything you need is there, right? For you to at least just be 6, 7, 8 wins a year in and year out. So that's where when you have to really look at and say, okay, what's really the problems? Because you got to dig a little deeper. If you come in and show up and say, okay, I'm just going to run this new offense that nobody's ever seen before, or something like that it's going to work. It just doesn't work out. So he's trying to separate the guys, and he's doing it by doing the simple things over and over and over again. If you really, this is what I always tell people, if you want, everybody's like, oh, we got to be tough, right? We got to be physical. We got to be this, right? Toughness really comes down to going into halftime, coming out of halftime, and then right in the middle to late third quarter to finish the game. Are you willing to do what you are supposed to do and then some over and over and over, especially when the game's tight or when it matters the most? And it could be as simple as, will I not hesitate to go take on that guard that's probably got me outweighed by 60 pounds and shock and release and stay in my gap? Or am I going to be like, you know what, I'm going to go make a play, jump out of my gap? Every Big Ten running back, every team has a really good running back in the Big Ten, and he hits the hole and he gets that first down. If you want a really good example of that, or a look at it as during COVID, Minnesota came down here with probably about half of their roster, right? I think it was like 42 scholarship guys or something like that. And then the rest were like either walk-ons or probably true freshmen. And the way that they closed out the game were 2 first downs. Had nothing to do. Everybody was like, oh, the defensive calls were bad. No, they weren't. They were actually perfect. Just had 2 guys that jumped out of their gap on 2 separate situations that Nebraska needed to stop Minnesota and get the ball back in order to either run the clock out or kick a field goal to make the game out of hand. And it didn't happen. That's what toughness is about. How do you find that? Is putting them in the situation over and over and over. Because if you can do it now, you'll be able to do it on a Saturday, or in this case, a Thursday game, or a Friday in Champaign, Illinois. So, that's just part of it. And that's the separating the guys that did it. It was never easy. When we were successful, it was never easy. When the teams were successful before we won national championships, it was never easy. In the 80s, it was never easy, and never in the 70s and in the early 2000s, and it never easy. Football in general isn't easy. There's not a camp out there that it's like, man, this is great. Let's go have a party and let's just hang out. It's just a hard sport to play. And it's even harder if you try to participate and your heart's not in it. And, sometimes, I have to commend guys that come to that realization that it's just not for them and make that decision and not be selfish and just maybe be a part of the problem. Right. And so, look, you wish them the best and move forward. But as where Nebraska team is right now, I think they took a step into the right direction of, who they are as a team. Now, does it necessarily mean that the scrimmage was perfect yesterday? Probably not. But what it did was allowed them to deal with adversity during the week when they found out they probably knew before Matt Rule said anything that Bets was gone. I'm sure. And be able to deal with that and then show up on Saturday and, go through a scrimmage and try to get better and have some corrections and fight through adversity, I'm sure, in those scrimmages, right? Because I'm sure right now, 2 weeks into camp, it's not perfect, right? And a lot of times I wouldn't say you don't want it to be perfect, but you don't want to peak too early. But I think that, you have to be able to fight through it. Do you have a bad series? Like I've had, even in college where you're out there, you want to win your job and you don't perform well. Well, when you walk, you got to get it together over there on the sidelines, whether it's coaching, or, talking to yourself. And where they're at right now is a very unique place as far as how this year goes. They have all the goals that they can attain. But they have to make sure that when they come back to practice on Monday, it's even closer. The 31st is going to be even closer because Monday's what, the 14th?
Yeah. So today's already the 13th. Yeah.
So essentially, you're 2 weeks away. This next week of practice is the most important practice. This is where the competition should be 90% decided, and then that last week has got to be 1,000% preparation for Minnesota. And that doesn't mean if you're on scout team this week that you won't, because you're going to have to then you're going to have to make your way on special teams. And then if somebody gets nicked up or doesn't play well, you got to be ready.
Yeah, which we've seen a lot. It happens to every team. Not it just doesn't matter.
Nobody's going to be oblivious.
Stay ready.
Yeah, you got to stay ready.
Which has been a problem under Scott Frost. Which you can go into if that's recruiting, COVID year, all that. But that was one of his biggest problems. Like the development underneath. I felt like if we got guys hurt, especially our defense last year, you were scratching. If any of those guys got hurt or tired, there was like hardly anyone to replace them with.
Right, and so that's where I think Matt Rule's trying to alleviate that by the way they're practicing and holding them accountable and giving them a huge number of reps, even with the mistakes. If I could tell you this, like you said, if everybody was playing well and and we had the depth, Matt Rule wouldn't be here. He wouldn't be here. He wouldn't be here right now. Now, if we could, what I mean is we wouldn't be losing or hadn't lost as much as we had. But, I was able to talk to some people up in Minnesota and get their feeling. It's always good to talk to guys that played there, guys that cover the team. And we all talk and stuff, and I won't give out like true details, but what the feeling is they've had a decent camp. It's not the same Minnesota team that we're used to seeing, or at least right now.
What do you mean by that?
Well, look, you lose a quarterback. Just
personnel wise. Okay.
Well, it's just that there's not the knowns aren't there, right? So the quarterback that's been there so long, he's starting to embody the head coach where he was ball headed as well. He's gone.
How long was Morgan there for? Was he 6 years?
Yeah,
okay.
6 years. And he started to take on PJ Fleck. They say
he looked like PJ Fleck on the field.
Right,
you couldn't tell.
Yeah, you couldn't tell. You thought
that
was
mini me. That's what it looked like.
Yeah,
on
Austin Powers.
Yeah.
And Mo Ibrahim is gone. So that's your 16. He's one of the best running backs.
Yeah, that was your bell cow.
Yeah, in the Big Ten, year in and year out. The best center in the nation is gone. So that's your guy. And then they lost another lineman to the NFL. So those are like, look, as much as I always say, a defense that's a really good defense is strong up the middle. A really good offense is strong up the middle. Center, guard, quarterback, running back. Those three are gone. The transition has been not as smooth, I think, as you'd hope, which it shouldn't be. A guy has never started before. He's thrust into a new role. He's still competing for his job, but they would like him to win. And they have a new running back came from a lower level. He's starting to learn that the Big Ten holes, close up a little bit different. And the things you could get away with at that level, you can't here. What's really different is when PJ Fleck first got there, it was really offense oriented, special teams, trying to get a big play. And the defense was kind of bend but don't break, right? Really, really defensive back loaded. Well, now this year, their defense is thought of to be the leader in the house, right? Until the offense starts to get together. They have decent skill positions on offense. They have a Spain or who's a tight end, who's a legitimate NFL prospect. Been a long time starter there. Is a I call him a two-way tight end where he can block and set the edge. He can play in the slot, and he can obviously play, with his hand down as an inline, not only a blocker but pass receiver. He's a matchup problem. But I don't know if they'll be scheming up to get him, right? So he will be I always say they get him the ball when it's known that he'll get the ball. Second and long, third short. They haven't really featured him early in the possession, which I think is probably a mistake on their part. And then they got some receivers that are decent, not the Batemans, not those guys that we had to face in years, with guys that are starting in the NFL or will eventually start in the NFL. They got Ottman Bell back for his 7th year, right? Because he had a COVID year, but again, he's still coming off a major knee injury. So the offense and the thing that you kind of known that, like, okay, we know what Minnesota's going to do. They're going to grind you up, then hit you with some explosive plays, try to
catch you on the play action when you're falling
grind
asleep.
You up some more, finish you out the game, finish the game out, and next thing you know, the game, they were only up by 6 and they end up winning by 16. So it'll look a lot worse than it is. So I think this team, especially early in the year, right? You will be able to maybe confuse the coordinator and the quarterback. Here's also something that's a little bit unique. They have co-offensive coordinators. Okay, I think Nebraska can take advantage of that. Me and you could have a plan right here in our office together, But when it gets intense and I want to play called and you want to play called, we don't, and unless it seems like they don't have who's the seniority, where, I'm only going to you for run plays or vice versa. It's co-offensive coordinators. There's no two humans that think alike. That's why I say opposites attract. That relationship is going to make or break that season. It's a very unique way PJ Fleck has went outside of the box to do it. Maybe to spark an offense or maybe to start over.
Mm-hmm.
But it's early in the season, so they're not tightened up. No matter how many scrimmages you go through, this isn't week 6.
We saw kind of a little bit of that passing off the playbook just here at Nebraska.
Right.
There's a little bit of time where it's weird between Whipple and Frost, who's really calling
Whipple,
the plays
Frost,
here.
And then even the year before, you had, I think, Lubick, and then Greg Austin was run game coordinator. Like that does,
it just never felt like it was all on the same page. Like you said, you get into the game.
If you're a run game coordinator and I'm putting together the schemes and the running plays, that's fine. But the run game coordinator was like, okay, what do you got, on 3rd and 2? Well, the 3rd and 2 run plays are set up by 1st and 2nd down. So if I'm just sitting there waiting to get a call, I don't have a rhythm.
Yeah.
So that's also makes the offense without rhythm. So that's a little bit unique inside scoop there on Minnesota, which we'll see if that comes to fruition here in a couple weeks. But we're going to go to a quick break. We're going to talk about NFL preseason. A couple Huskers got off last night, and so I was happy to see that. We'll talk about that. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle. We'll be right back. This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
I wanted to quit for so long, but I didn't know where to start.
I was afraid of what people would think, but then I found the right support to start my recovery journey. 1 in 14 Americans reports experiencing a substance use disorder, a treatable medical condition. Treatment can take many forms, so there are a variety of options to explore and find the one that works best for you. Recovery from drug addiction is possible.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is where it happens. Long hikes with friends, kayaking adventures with family, more horseback riding, zip line gliding, rock face climbing, hammock camping fun than you could ever imagine. And it's all outdoors, amongst the trees and across the prairie, here beneath Nebraska skies. Plan an outing today at yournebraskaadventure.com. Sponsored by Nebraska Game and Parks, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends, surprise parties, camps, birthdays. The same way you plan for the important moments, start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Don't let biased algorithms or degree screens or exclusive professional networks or stereotypes. Don't let anything keep you from discovering the half of the workforce who are stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time to tear the paper ceiling and see the stars beyond it. Find out how you can make stars part of your talent strategy at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
If you're a veteran or know a veteran who's having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, the Veterans Crisis Line provides direct connection to free, confidential, and compassionate support. Dial 988, then press 1, and you'll be connected to a trained crisis counselor who will listen, provide support, and connect you to additional resources if needed. Thank you for your service. We owe you our support. Dial 988, then press 1. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
We are back inside the Huddle. Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. T. Farley said his birthday is Wednesday, and he said he'd love a gift from me, a great gift from me. You know what, T. Farley? I'm going to get you a gift, man. I'm going to make sure you have something for your birthday, my brother. One, because I love you. Number two, it's your birthday. I'm in a good mood. I think I could do something for you. I got to decide what I'm going to do for him, man. Just because of you know what, that just it just, you know, Harrison, sometimes it's come to mind, you know, I'm gonna see what I can do, surprise him a little bit, something that he can use.
What can Farley use?
He's pretty simple, so I mean it's but I'm gonna find something that he can use, man, make it worth his while.
That'd be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
I did find Adrian Martinez. He did have a nice play yesterday. As we're heading on to preseason talk, for a first down, nice little scramble play from Adrian Martinez for the Lions.
Yeah,
looked like Adrian Martinez.
I mean, that's one thing Adrian's gonna do. It'd be interesting to see if the Lions will like keep him around on the practice squad, let him develop as a passer, learn how to be a true NFL quarterback. One guy that really jumped off the map was Garrett Nelson. You know, he didn't get drafted, turned pro early. Went down to Miami. These first two games is where you're going to see a lot of the guys, the younger guys, get in early and sometimes start because the veterans have probably had joint practices. So that was, you know, where they're
doing one series most.
Right, one series at most. But they have a lot of, you know, established guys. But Garrett Nelson, you know, look, playing against guys that he can play against and do well. He had 4 tackles, 2 solo. He had a sack, tackle for loss, and he had another QB hit. So you like to see guys that are active and guys that can, you know, get their chance. You know, sometimes, you know, I'm sure Garrett would have, you know, rather, you know, been drafted. I mean, everybody would have, you know, I would have hoped to get drafted. But look, he got a chance. He's making the most of it. You know, special teams is going to be huge for him. And if he continues to have good games, you know, it'll work out well for him. And so you like to see a guy to go down there and get a chance in a loaded outside linebacker room and make an impact. And another guy that I got to see last night, just watching, was Travis Vokolek.
Okay, I thought there was one more guy I'll shout out if you don't get to him, but he had a nice outing too.
Baby Gronk did his thing, had a couple catches, was highlighted. So the thing is that you look for when you see these guys is not only when they do make a play, what the announcers, you know, say about them, you know, because they're going and meeting with the coaches and saying, hey, who was a surprise, right? So Travis Vokolek had 2 catches for 30 yards, 15-yard average, kind of maybe got back to what he was doing at the Northwestern game. They talked about it. They liked his skill set being in the mix of tight ends. Obviously got Mark Andrews, probably the 3rd best tight end in the league behind Kittle and Kelsey. And that's not too shabby to be in that room and to be involved in Baltimore because that's a heavy tight end oriented offense. And so he fits in perfect. So who are you going to talk about?
Trey Palmer. He was on the Buccaneers. He had a nice touchdown catch.
Yeah, Trey.
Buccaneers and Huskers. There's this connection right there.
Yeah, and you know what they have? One of the Davis twins down there, right? I think.
Yeah, they still got they got Levante David.
Well, they got Levante David.
Yeah, I don't know about Dave. I think they might still have one of the Davis twins.
Yeah, I think they have one of the.
And then is Sue still sitting out there as a hired assassin right now?
Sue's chilling at the crib right now.
Still high. Okay.
Oh, he's smart. He don't got no business going in there.
He's got the best. I mean, at this point in his career, that's truly what he is.
Yeah.
I'd imagine as a defensive lineman, that's got to be the peak of where you're at in your career because you don't have to go through any of the camps.
Yeah, he's smart.
Are camps that bad?
Well, no, not really, but it's
like compared to the NFL, is it something that like because I always wonder how much are you guys really getting in, or is it more for the younger
I'm thinking
guys?
he maybe want to get in the last week or two, get the conditioning going, and he knows how to play. It's not like he knows. I mean, and look, and Ndamukong Suh has always kept himself in good shape, and so he's going to come in. He's not going to embarrass himself and say, "Oh, he's going to come in 30 pounds overweight." He's going to come in. And, he's a big, strong. His strength and his ability to play the run is always going to be there. So that's what he can do. Trey Palmer had 4 catches, 33 yards, a touchdown. Kay Warner, he's down there. He had one catch, 10 yards. So look, man, the Huskers are, representing well. And, we talked about Cam Jurgens early, making the transition right now into, playing right guard. And also I want to say this, one of the Davis twins, I will tell you this, plays for the Houston Texans and had a huge tackle for loss. He played for, I don't know which one. I always get him confused. He played in the XFL, USFL, whatever it is with The Rock, and got picked up, and he made a pretty good play. And so it's good to see guys in Nebraska in recent teams and obviously in a couple older regimes do well. So Inside the Huddle goes by quick. Hour, not even an hour. Always good to be in here with you and Harrison. Hopefully the rain subsides so people can get out and enjoy their last Sunday before kids go back to school, man. And so
keep tuning in too.
Yeah.
I know some numbers are going up. Makes sense. Football's right around the corner.
Oh yeah,
but
we're going to be doing some more stuff as well. Got after game show and more Inside the Huddle. We appreciate Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. Jay Foreman, Harrison, Inside the Huddle. We are out.